Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We are back, and there is simply no time to recap everything that has happened since we've been away. But in short, we nearly went to war with Iran. The UK's election made Bojo Prime Minister, and the coronavirus has started spreading around the world. And if you happen to feel like you're getting sick right now, you do have it, and you only have hours to live. Also, Harry and Meghan left the royal family. Baby Yoda showed the world what it was like when Yoda was a baby. Bong Joon-ho won all the Oscars. Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire. And this poodle named Seba won Best in Show at the Westminster Dog Show, making her, I believe, 100% that bitch. But obviously, we have to get to the biggest story of the break. What happens when an obvious criminal sociopath is accused of abusing his power, yet somehow holds on to his office by sailing through a sham investigation?
Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot, is now cleared of wrongdoing. A man claimed that Gritty punched his 13-year-old son in the back during a holiday photo shoot in November. After an investigation, Philadelphia police cleared Gritty. I'm sure that Gritty just kind of rolled his eyes, because that's what they're Googling.
Hold on. For a start, I'm not sure that googly is the best way to describe Gritty's eyes at all. Deeply psychotic? Sure. Two swirling vortexes of horniness and rage? Better. A pair of haunted nipples floating on a plate of milk and surrounded by a nest of orangutan pubes? Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're describing this monster's eyes. But clearly, Gritty is not the only aggro-neon weirdo celebrating his acquittal these days. The president beat his impeachment charges. Although certain Republicans who voted to acquit him claim that the whole experience may well have changed him.
I believe that the president has learned from this case. The president has been impeached. That's a pretty big lesson. I believe that he will be much more cautious in the future.
What are you talking about, Susan? Of course he hasn't learned his lesson. Trump never learns his lesson. This is the man whose firstborn child was Donald Trump Jr., and he kept having children. There's no lesson-learning capacity in the man. And if you need further proof of that, just look what happened this week with Trump associate Roger Stone, convicted last year on 7 counts of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstructing a proceeding. On Monday, prosecutors recommended a sentence of 7 to 9 years in prison, and that is when things got weird.
Tonight, at least 4 prosecutors stepping down from the Roger Stone case after a dramatic decision to overrule their recommendation that he spend 7 to 9 years in prison. The stunning rebuke from the Justice Department leadership came just hours after President Trump tweeted that the prosecutor's suggested sentence for Stone was, quote, horrible and very unfair, a miscarriage of justice.
Yeah, but was it a miscarriage of justice, though? Because bear in mind, Stone was found guilty on all counts. The recommendation was within established federal guidelines. And also, just look at him. I know you shouldn't profile people based on how they look, but on the other hand, look at him. Look at him. His dress code is business scoundrel. He looks like the mannequin at a department store for Dick Tracy villains. He looks like a guy whose day planner just says, frame Roger Rabbit. Look at him! And even if you think the recommended sentence was in fact too long, it's up to the judge whether to impose it, and there's an appeal system after that. But to have DOJ leadership interfering in a case involving a Trump ally hours after the president directly commented on it is appalling. This is America. Your experience with the criminal justice system should not depend on how much the president likes you. It should depend on how much money you have, what colour your skin is, and whether or not the judge has already had lunch. That is how we do things here in the United States, buddy. And the excuses offered by the president's defenders range from the absurd to the genuinely terrifying.
The executive power is vested in the president. The top law enforcement officer is the attorney general. If he wants to counteract decisions of the line prosecutor, that's his dang job. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this.
I like the fact that a president of the United States, when he sees injustice, he's pointing it out. That's exactly what you want to have a president do.
I don't want to hear any crap about an independent Justice Department. This Justice Department, as does everyone, works for the president. It is part of the executive branch.
Oh, he's right, of course. Everyone at the Justice Department works for the president. When he says jump, they should say, how high? When he says lock her up, they should say, how long? When he says get me flubber, they should say, from the movie? When he says yes, they should say, okay. When he says, where's that flubber I asked for, they should say, we're working on it. When he says, I need it now, they should say, okay, here it is. When he says, is this lettuce, they should say, no, that's flubber. When he says, it's not dancing, they should say, it's probably just tired. When he says, go away so my flubber can sleep, they should say, it would be an honour. And then everyone in the Justice Department should line up and kiss the president's flubber goodnight because, damn it, they're part of the executive branch. They work for him. This whole situation looked so bad that Barr gave an interview in which he claimed he never discussed Stone's sentence with Trump, but added that it was time for the president to stop tweeting about Department of Justice criminal cases. You know, good luck with that. And while this was widely portrayed by the media as a rift between Trump and his AG, I have a sickening feeling that Laura Ingraham was one of the few people actually seeing things clearly.
All right, John, the media sees the sexy story of Trump versus Barr, but they missed the fact that Barr was basically telling Trump, don't worry, I got this.
To borrow a phrase used almost exclusively by white supremacists, Laura Ingraham is right. Barr's comments weren't so much don't interfere with the Justice Department as they were don't publicly interfere with the Justice Department because I'm already doing what you want. In fact, on Friday, news broke that Barr was reviewing the DOJ's prosecution of another Trump ally, Michael Flynn, all of which suggests that Susan Collins may actually have been right about one thing. Trump did learn a lesson from his impeachment trial. Specifically, I can get away with anything because no one will hold me accountable. And unlike the child who was definitely punched in the back by a googly-eyed fur demon, we cannot say that we didn't see this coming.
It is Tuesday, the 18th of February of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small dash, a mere scant pinch of hot Hungarian smoked paprika will make all the difference in the world. Go ahead. If you have the Spanish kind, it is equally as good. Some people say better because there's less of the Spanish paprika. I wouldn't say better, it's just more expensive because there's less of it. So go ahead, use the Hungarian kind. It's great, and it will make all the difference in the world. Jeez, ask all those business people trekking across the Silk Road. They picked some up on the way, and they brought it back. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, Marco. Well, and I'm talking about you, Polo. Not the guy in Florida. Come on. We got to go a little bit further back in history to get some of my associative associations. Well, it looks like Susan Collins sure learned her lesson about Roger Stone, Trump's corruption, and that bill from the American Barr Association that seems to have come due. Yes, I know. Talk about associative associations. My gosh, Bill Barr is being pretty much called on, if not demanded, to step down, resign, quit, move away. What is it now? 2,000 former prosecutors and growing. Now, I heard they were former DOJ employees.
So were they all prosecutors? Maybe they were line chiefs and that sort of title. But we also have the American Federal Judge Association calling an emergency session. Usually, I think their next meeting was supposed to be in April, but they can't wait. Who can? Remember when they said, the impeachment was rushed? Well, sometimes you just can't wait. Wow, there's a flood coming our way. We better hurry up and get out of the way. You're just rushing around. Come on, slow down. Well, sometimes it's important to slow down. You can be in a rush and do things logically and rationally. And that's what we did in the House. I know it seems like maybe it was a mistake to some people. No, it exposed this crook. And now he's just out there brazenly breaking the law. Everything that he was charged with, he is doing right now for the whole world to see. And I got to tell you, there's enough of America seeing it. I know his toxic third, those Colt 45 cult types, they don't care. They justify it. They want a king, okay? They want one. And, but, as I've said repeatedly, he has awakened the terrible sleeping giant of Hirohito fame. Hirohito, the Japanese admiral, pretty much the military brain behind the Japanese military effort against us, the U.S., and I guess the rest of the world, too. But regardless, he had been educated, I believe, at Harvard and East Coast Ivy League school, and he had seen America, and he knew what we were capable of. Yeah, pretty much people are hunkered down, just doing their job. Just don't wake them up because they might get pissed. And that is what is happening now. It happened, the Vietnam War stopped. Not because of just all those hippies in the streets. Not just because of pretty much everybody burning their draft cards. Remember those days? No, you don't? Yeah, it happened. And any number of things, but the most important that caused the end of that war was when the great middle of America got pissed. What Nixon called the silent majority, and he thought the silent majority was all those law and order types screaming at the top of their head, "Oh my God, we're going to be killed by blacks in our sleep. We got to have law and order." That was no majority. That was a bunch of frightened scaredy cats, and they're just pretty much a toxic third of the population, like now. So I believe it might have been, was it Sapphire? It might have been William Sapphire who coined the phrase, the silent majority. Or it could have been Peggy Noonan. Maybe it was Peggy Noonan. But nonetheless, the great silent majority were not those whiny, loudmouth law and order types. They were not silent, and they were not a majority. They were just the loudest in the room. The silent majority was that great, big, giant, terrible sleeping giant. When that woke up, that war stopped. And people are pissed now. Granted, I was reminded, and I had to remind people back, there's this belief that when Bush lied us into war, we were just so overcome by 9/11 that we had to lash out. It didn't matter who we lashed out at. And we as America, the whole of America, with no dissent whatsoever, just went our way into war. No, actually what happened is I remember 500, maybe it was even 800,000 people on Market Street in San Francisco alone. There were so many people on Market Street, they spilled down Columbus Avenue all the way to the wharf. Fisherman's Wharf, by the way, right past Bay Street. So that was just San Francisco alone. New York, I think, had almost 2 million people protesting going into a war. I know only one voice of all of our elected officials voiced concern, in opposition to the AUMF. And that was my representative, Barbara Lee, because Barbara Lee, no matter where I live in America, no matter where I am in the world, and if I happen to be on that Musk spaceship to Mars, Barbara Lee will always speak for me. And she spoke loud and clear on that day when she cast her vote against the AUMF because she knew exactly what was going to happen, and that is exactly what happened. If you don't listen to black women, you will suffer the consequences, and here we are. So the reason that we don't believe there was any dissent, in spite of the fact there was, 2-3 million people in London, this was an event that occurred around the world. Millions upon millions of people took to the streets and protested Bush's lying us into war. We bombed Afghanistan and attacked Afghanistan because the Sauds attacked us. And I had to remind people it would be the exact same as if when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, we attacked Mexico. That was shock doctrine, disaster capitalism, BS, and we knew what Bush was doing when he was doing it. We knew who attacked us, and if we were going to do something, shouldn't it be directed at them? So there were millions of people in the streets across America and around the world, but it was little reported. And it goes back to that other adage, too. If a tree falls in the forest when there's a giant anti-war protest going on, and no one turns on a camera, did it really happen? And I'm not talking about the tree falling. I'm talking about the protest. So now, pretty much a lot of people think, yeah, we just went ahead and, we're just a bunch of zombies. Go ahead, let's go to war. Let's kick somebody. It doesn't matter who. You know who was involved in all that kind of BS back in the day? You think Bill Barr wasn't part of the government then? Yes, he was. He has been the cover-up general since Bush won. And even before, now that I think about it, but he came to prominence during Bush 1. Oh, yeah, I think we should just pardon everybody in Iran-Contra, even though they were running a secret government out of the basement of the White House. Oliver North. They only win by cheating. They only win by cheating, and they're going to cheat again. And the terrible sleeping giant has been roused from its slumber, and Trump doesn't know what the hell is going to hit him. He's out there intimidating the judge in the Stone case, doxing the jury forewoman. How dare he? He is a mobster. We need to call him what he is. Not some sort of he has trouble with the truth. He's a lying mobster up to his ears in Russian money. And now that Dark Towers has come up, we can follow the money and Deutsche Bank and the whole kit and caboodle. And I still want to know about Anthony Kennedy's son. And Anthony Kennedy stepping aside. And where's my Merrick Garland? Which reminds me. Where's my Kamala Harris? I want my Kamala Harris back. Kamala, come on. If there's going to be a brokered convention, get in there. She should be on the debate stage. Bloomberg was not on the ballot last week, and he's on the debate stage this week. I want my Kamala on the debate stage. He wasn't on the ballot last week either. Please. Yeah, we needed her in the Senate, but she didn't get to ask any questions except what was written down. I want my Kamala back. Hey, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oh, roasted corn goes into my chowders. Fair warning, okay? Just so you know. It is the West Coast, after all. We do things, I wouldn't say differently, but with a heightened awareness of its real import. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, well, here in the Bistro Cafe, Trump lashed out after Obama reminded people he created a lot of jobs. And Trump did it on President's Day, too, which is funny because Trump, when he announced President's Day, he made presidents as a possessive, apostrophe S instead of just S, which is the plural of presidents. He thinks President's Day is about him. So, of course, he's going to lie about the economy that he inherited that seems to be doing fair for those who have the wherewithal and disposable income to throw away their money in the gambling stock market. All right. He went off. He doesn't like Obama. Never has. In fact, I'd almost say he hates him. Trump keeps trying to gut the program honoring Ambassador Chris Stevens. Oh, you remember him? That was the ambassador who was killed at the Benghazi consulate that Hillary got blamed for because the Republicans cut all the money for security for consulates and embassies overseas, knowing that this might happen. They only win by cheating. And John Bolton said he's hoping Trump does not suppress his much vaunted book. He couldn't testify in front of Congress, not the House. That's a bunch of fucking liberal commies running that place. I can't testify to them under oath. It would be unseemly. But the Senate, subpoena me and I'll testify in front of the Senate. And Moscow Mitch McConnell said, we're not subpoenaing that guy to testify under oath. You know what the hell might happen? And so now we're waiting for Bolton's book. But apparently, if you can intimidate a judge, dox a jury forewoman, probably start auditing every single one of those, 2,000, 3,000 former prosecutors? I bet they're all going to get tax audits now. Doesn't it sound Nixonian? Remember, Roger Stone, known as a dirty trickster on primetime TV because that was Family Hours, was really and is really a rat fucker. He was rat fucking then. He's rat fucking now. And we're all getting rat fucked. After the break, we move to the chef's table where authorities have arrested a prominent rights activist and legal scholar who called for President Xi Jinping to step down. You can't do that there. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said his meeting with Pompeo last week that Pompeo didn't want you or any of the rest of us to know about went swimmingly well. And he knows exactly what they are going to do with all of those Russian nukes when the START treaty expires. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the rightish of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link and the social media scroll at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, well, you would be doing not only your civic duty in keeping Resistance Radio resisting, as the founders of this great nation originally intended, but you would also be helping us pay our bills. Thank you for that. And I also want to give a shout out to our newest Patreon contributor, I see that you have chosen to get the benefit. So I'll get that bumper sticker and or the Netroots Radio, the famous Netroots Radio ad block, in the mail pretty soon here. Okay, give me a little bit of time here, and I'll get that mailed to your physical mailing address. Snail mail. People do that because that's how you get things delivered today. We're not able to actually render them by any kind of 3D printer yet, but we will. And wouldn't that be something? Oh, yeah. All those science fiction movies where the monster is generated in the little tub of Matrix plasma stuff. Eek! That's what we have ready for us. Or will we just get a blanket from Amazon, print it up on a 3D printer, and you can just throw it on your bed? I see that coming. Nonetheless, all kidding aside, I'll get your benefit out in the mail here. All right. It won't be like the Soros check that everybody's waiting for. Okay? Jeez. The interest alone on my Soros checks, just from when I was working to help divest UC Berkeley from South African Krugerrands, because they were racist, apartheid, bigot murderers. I was owed money from then. The interest from that alone, I think, would pretty much pay off most of the student debts in the state of Oregon, at least Oregon. If I were to take on all of just the interest, I'm not talking about principal that I'm owed. I'm talking about just the interest that is accrued on all the other Soros checks that I'm owed, I might be able to pay off all the student debts, at least up to maybe just east of the Rockies from where the mothership of Netroots Radio sits. Could be. It's a lot. So I'm owed, and I'm expecting it soon. And I also, any lawyers out there can help me put out a cease and desist letter to the Department of Justice. They continue to use the Justice Department. I have been cyber squatting on the Justice Department really about over 20 years now. And I'm getting a little peeved, especially with what Barr is doing. I think that I am owed, and I might need a little help at least drafting the letter. No, I don't. I'm being rhetorical. Yeah, it's all sarcasm in the end now, isn't it? It's all just sarcasm. Now, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but I just want to sum up. Thank you for your generosity to our newest Patreon and to all of those Patreons who have been Patreoning for all these many years. Thank you. Boy, do we need it. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple because Tom takes care of it. And you just go to @Netroots Radio. How simple is that? Now, if you wanted to go to @Justice Putnam, that's fairly simple. I take care of that. And that's also where I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I post it on Twitter and other social media platforms right from there. If you would like to follow the show, this is where it gets complex. Because you have to go to Cookbook West. Don't ask me why. I pushed the button to choose that before I realized what I was doing, and it was too late. So go to Cookbook West, @Cookbook West, if you'd like to follow the show. And most importantly in this whole spiel is pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. All right, let's get into this first offering here, since I really ranted at the top. I've been doing that lately. I just decided at some point, regular terrestrial radio conventions where you have breaks, sometimes at 22 after the hour and at the bottom of the hour. And then you got, a block towards the top of the hour that spills over into the next hour. I decided to forego that. We still have breaks, but, until we get a terrestrial radio gig, I'm just going to not be constrained by time. I might have to by space. But as far as time, we'll make that our own. All right. Oliver Willis brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, Trump keeps trying to take credit for economic gains that began under his predecessor. And who would that be? The greatest president in our lifetimes, indeed. And I've been around for a long time. The Trump campaign yesterday, Monday, tried to take credit for economic gains initiated under President Barack Obama after the latter shared a post on social media pretty much trolling Trump, and Trump reacted just like we knew he would when Obama posted the tweet. And that was marking the anniversary of a 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Well, you remember what that was? Trump keeps saying that Obama created some sort of big problem in our economy. It was the worst, and if we had Hillary in the midst of this, we would be worse than the Great Depression. Really, Donnie? I think you were a part of that crash, the cause of that crash. Let's be clear, Donnie. Earlier in the day, Obama had marked the 11-year anniversary of the Recovery Act becoming law by writing 11 years ago today, near the bottom of the worst recession in generations, I signed the Recovery Act, paving the way for more than a decade of economic growth and the longest streak of job creation in American history. Well, Trump can't let that stay, and neither can anybody in his campaign or his purview in the Oval Office. The re-election campaign took exception to Obama's tweet in a statement to, who else? Fox News. President Trump reversed every single failed Obama-era economic policy, and with it reversed the floundering Obama-Biden economy, wrote Kayleigh McEnany, Trump's national campaign press secretary. In reality, the recovery that Trump inherited when he took office in early 2017 began in large part under Obama. By the time Obama took office in January of 2008, the Bush-era Great Recession had wrought havoc on the economy with nearly 800,000 jobs lost that month alone. After the Recovery Act was enacted without significant support from the Republican Party, by the way, the economy began adding jobs. For the remainder of Obama's time in office and into Trump's tenure, the economy added jobs every single month. When Obama took office, unemployment had reached as high as 10%. By his last month in office of December 2016, the economy added 146,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate was at 4.7%. Now, Trump has previously attempted to talk down the Obama recovery and take credit for his predecessor's economic gains. The years of economic decay are over, Trump said in his State of the Union address on February 4th, where hardly anybody was out there. But if you go to the National Archives, they'll have scrubbed the fact that there wasn't hardly anybody out there. Also, did you know the National Archives is scrubbing all ICE arrests and all of their... Not only that, they're scrubbing the reportage on tests whether there was clean water or not. What's up with the National Archives? Back to the article. The days of our country being used, taken advantage of, and even scorned by other nations are long behind us. Gone too are the broken promises, jobless recoveries, tired platitudes, and constant excuses for the depletion of American wealth, power, and prestige. If we had not reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success. PolitiFact notably rated Trump's comments as false across a broad range of economic metrics, and economic performance under Trump continued gains made during the final years under Obama, Politico wrote. Trump inherited an economy that was already getting back on its feet, the news organization summarized. Oliver Willis of the American Independent brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe. And I can't remember, did I mention that Oliver Willis brought us the first offering? He did. And he is, of course, at the American Independent. Donald Trump has removed all funding in his proposed 2021 fiscal year budget for a nonprofit backed by the State Department that is designed to honor J. Christopher Stevens, the U.S. ambassador killed in the 2012 Benghazi attack. I should mention very quickly here, I was acquainted with Ambassador Stevens' parents. They were regulars at Cold Coffee and other areas around the Claremont, Elmwood district there at the Berkeley-Oakland border. And so I didn't know their import so much before the ambassador was killed, though he was somewhat of a personage there in the area and gave quite a few speeches at the university. But certainly his death at the hands of this attack, a terrorist attack, or a military attack, you take your pick, certainly made us locals much more aware of his import and who his parents were. So back to the article. The proposed budget for the State Department cuts $5 million designated for the Stevens Initiative, which provides for virtual international exchanges among young people and was developed in close partnership with the Stevens family. According to the group's website, it aims to make life-changing cross-cultural experiences available to a large number of young people in sustained and meaningful ways. Isn't this what Breivik killed all those kids over? Because they were trying to have, what is it again? Life-changing cross-cultural experiences? Yeah, that was part of it, if not all. They were liberals. And they were young. They were the next generation of leaders, and he had to take them out. They were all on an island for doing, kid leadership stuff. I know some of them were in their, early 20s, but hey, I'm so old. Everybody's a kid under 40 now, sometimes under 45. This cut of the Stevens Initiative, because it addresses life-changing cross-cultural experiences available to a large number of young people in sustained and meaningful ways. The cut for that sounds like it comes from the newlywed, Stephen Miller. The Trump administration made 2 previous attempts to defund the program in past budget proposals. In both instances, Congress restored the money. Republicans for years have invoked Stevens' death as a way to attack Democrats, specifically President Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who they claim are responsible. Republican-led congressional committees have pushed for further investigations and hearings into the attack, despite multiple probes clearing the Obama administration of wrongdoing. In September of 2015, Representative Kevin McCarthy, who is now the House Minority Leader, admitted to Fox that the party sought to use the Benghazi attack to hurt Clinton's political future. You gotta dirty the babe up. The conservative news network itself spent hundreds of hours promoting bogus stories related to Benghazi. Sort of like all these bogus stories about the Ukraine we hear now. And I'm not talking about, the Bidens only. I'm talking about Rudy and all of his BS. During the 2016 campaign, Trump invoked Benghazi to attack Clinton. With Benghazi and with our ambassador, remember that's all Hillary Clinton, folks. And then all those folks that he was addressing, lock her up. Lock her up. The decision to pull funding for the Stevens Initiative was one of several campaigns being spearheaded by Trump to undo Obama's legacy, because whatever the black guy did, you got to undo it because, I don't know, let's go piss on his bed. Most recently, the administration chose to advocate the use of anti-personnel landmines, which have killed hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians across the globe, only because a 2014 policy implemented by Obama. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham, otherwise known as Baghdad Steph, defended the decision at the time, saying Trump reversed the policy in order to support and equip our troops so that they will forever remain the greatest fighting force in the world. According to experts, the U.S. military has not used landmines in military operation for nearly 30 years. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Do not fret, we still have the chef's table available. Even though this break's going to be pretty short, we got to rush to get back there. We still have it. John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Trump, raised concern yesterday, Monday, about his unpublished book being suppressed by the White House, and suggested he should be able to respond to Trump's tweets about him. I hope ultimately I can get the book published, Bolton told a Duke University event in North Carolina during his first public remarks since Trump's acquittal in his Senate impeachment trial. I hope it's not suppressed. Asked about Trump's criticism of him on Twitter, Bolton said, he tweets, but I can't talk about it. How fair is that? Bolton, age 71, hey boomer, left his post in September after disagreements with Trump, and Trump said he fired him. Bolton said he quit. Well, how about putting him under oath? Oh, I forgot. If you go under oath and tell the truth under penalty of prosecution, you will be persecuted by Trump. Don't tell the truth, not under oath. Media outlets reported in October that Bolton, a leading foreign policy hawk, was planning to write a book about his time in the Trump administration, so that's why he couldn't testify as his civic duty to the United States Congress under oath, because there was some money to be made. And what's more American than that? The New York Times reported that Bolton wrote his manuscript that Trump wanted to continue freezing the $391 million in security assistance to Ukraine until officials there, well, pretty much kowtowed to his every whim. And that whim at the time was, hey, dirty up Biden. All right? Hillary's not around anymore. We dirtied her up. She can't even get a lecture without people pillaring Hillary. Well, we better get to our break, and when we get back from that break, albeit a short one, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Making a cup of coffee isn't exactly rocket science, but a new study shows that a background in math and analytical chemistry doesn't hurt, because researchers who applied their skills in materials science and modeling to brewing espresso have made a grounds-breaking discovery. Contrary to popular belief, using fewer beans and a coarser grind will give you a more consistent shot. Their work appears in the journal Matter. If you're a coffee aficionado, you've no doubt noticed that some days you may get a great espresso. Other days, not so much. Even with the same coffee, the same machine, the same settings. To understand that variability, the researchers developed a mathematical model to explore how coffee is extracted or dissolved as water passes through the bed of grounds.
Basically, what we did was to start by writing down some equations which apply to just a single ground.
Jamie Foster, a senior lecturer in mathematics and physics at the University of Portsmouth.
So that's a less intimidating task because, in a real coffee bed, you've got millions and millions of particles that are all packed together in this very complicated way. And so a more tractable problem is to write down the equations on a single ground.
To model the entire coffee bed, Foster and his colleagues copied that equation millions of times, stirred in a bit more math, and then poured on the theoretical water.
The model tells us what we should expect in an ideal situation where all of the coffee is being contacted by all of the water equally.
Christopher Hendon, a computational chemist at the University of Oregon, who also took part in the study.
And indeed, the model describes reality very well for particular grind settings where there's a sufficient amount of large particles so that the water can flow freely through that bed. But when you grind sufficiently fine, that's when we started to see in real life a divergence from the expectation that the model was telling us.
With the fine grind, some shots were stronger than predicted, but some were considerably weaker, which flies in the face of conventional wisdom.
The thinking, if you want a stronger cup of coffee, is, well, I'll grind it finer because by doing that I'll have smaller particles in my grounds, and those smaller particles will have a higher surface area. And so this high surface area allows more rapid extraction from the grains.
But what the researchers found is,
if you kind of overdo the grinding, what ends up happening is that the particles are so small, in fact, that they kind of clog up the gaps where the water's trying to flow, and that actually hampers the extraction rather than helping it.
And the same is true for the amount of coffee you start with, so that less can counterintuitively end up tasting like more.
Since this article has come out, there has been a tremendous amount of activity on Twitter, arguing, discussing, just general excitement and interest in the project. And, independent of whether this helps make more reproducible coffee or not, this is a tremendous success that we have got millions of people to have read a scientific article and engage with science, but it's a great success for scientific literacy.
And we can all drink to that. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This day in labor history, the year was 1834. That was the day that one of the earliest labor newspapers in the country published its first edition in New York City. The Man was a paper aimed at trade unionists. It sold for only a penny. The masthead of the paper was unique. Images of a plowshare, sickle, rake, an axe, hatchet, a saw, a hammer, an auger, a square, and other tools were combined to spell out the letters THEMAN. Man. The newspaper was short-lived, however. It folded in 1835. But the Man was just one example of a growing number of working-class newspapers. The concerns and opinions of working people were often neglected by the mainstream press. In 1828, the Mechanics' Free Press was founded in Philadelphia. The paper declared that the working class are the blood, bone, and sinew of the nation. Its circulation grew to 2,000, but it closed 3 years after it began publishing. 50 labor papers started in the 1820s and early 1830s. Most were printed in industrialized northeastern cities. Perhaps the most well-known paper of the time was the Working Class Advocate from New York City. The paper published working people's news for 2 decades. The years between 1880 and 1940 are considered the golden age of working-class journalism in the United States. Thousands of union and radical papers operated during this era. Many of these papers were published in the workers' native languages, as immigrants were a growing part of the American workforce. Many unions published their own newspapers or journals. These papers were a vital part of organizing the labor movement, especially in an era before television and the internet. Today, the labor press continues to be a powerful voice for working people.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's a lot more of America where we come from. And here it is currently about 23 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high a little warmer than yesterday. Mid-50s, maybe a little bit warmer. Not quite to the upper 50s, but around mid-50s. We were low 50s yesterday. Overnight lows will be in the low 30s to upper 20s. And winds are light and variable all day today. They're currently out of the southeast. Will shift out of the northeast tonight and increase in velocity at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Generally sunny conditions for today and clear skies tonight, and generally sunny tomorrow with expected highs in the upper 50s. And winds will be light and variable, so they say. Extended forecast looks like we are still expecting a rainy, snowy mix over the weekend. We'll see if that changes. Pollen is rated none locally. The air quality index in the region is good at 26 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 3. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.23 inches. Visibility is at, oh my, there's a lot of ice fog out there. It says 8 miles here, but at the mothership, it looks to me like it's about maybe 4 or less. And that relative humidity is at 72%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 47 degrees with a rain shower. Paris is 52 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 62 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 46 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 43 and fair. Hong Kong is 54 and clear. Tokyo is 43 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And they have a lot of clouds too, so much they're calling it cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Zhang Wu of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Chinese authorities have arrested a prominent rights activist and legal scholar who had called on President Xi Jinping to step down over his handling of crises, including the coronavirus outbreak. Zhu Xiwang has been on the run since December after attending a gathering in the southern city of Xiamen, which focused on a discussion of human rights in China, according to Hua Ji, an activist and friend of Zhu's. 4 others who had attended the gathering in December were previously arrested. Zhu was arrested on Saturday night by Beijing police, with assistance by police in Guangzhou. Zhu's girlfriend, who was in Beijing, has not been reachable since Saturday. I wonder where they took her. Maybe to a re-education camp. Zhu, a longtime activist for judicial and legal reform, in 2012 founded the New Citizens Movement, which called on government officials to disclose their wealth. He was sentenced in 2014 to 4 years in prison for his work with the group.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday yesterday, after meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo last week, you know, the meeting Pompeo and the rest of the Trump administration didn't want you and the rest of America to know about, said that he felt a more constructive approach from Washington when it came to the U.S.-Russia strategic dialogue. I felt certain small moves made toward a more constructive approach by our American partners, Lavrov said on his ministry's website. Lavrov said the two men had spoken about issues related to strategic dialogue between Russia and the U.S. and about arms control. Oh, you mean dismantling NATO? The last remaining major arms control treaty between Moscow and Washington, the New START Accord, expires next year. Russia said it has already wanted to extend it, but the U.S. officials have called it flawed and outdated. Wow, how convenient. The treaty is the last major nuke arms control treaty between the world's two biggest nuke powers and limits the number of strategic nuclear warheads they can deploy. So no wonder we want to get rid of it. And no wonder Vlad's pretty much lying that he wants it extended. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.